Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Amenities, Land and Property Committee. It's Wednesday, the 5th of May at 2 o'clock. Welcome to members of the public and to the committee joining us for what will be our last virtual meeting. Next time we meet in June, we should all be in person. I'll kick off with the standard agenda items, 99220, declarations of any disclosable pecuniary interest, please. My chat box is working, so do indicate in chat if you want to raise a point, or if that's not working, I should be able to see hands up, so just sort of wave or make it known that you want to talk. So I can't see any declarations at this point, so we'll move on, please. 993, apologies for absence. Chris Crimmen, Minute Secretary, do you have any apologies?
I have no formal apologies, except I've spoken to Carla, who is having trouble. She's got some issues with her children at the moment, so she wasn't sure. If she's not here, she asked me to pass her apologies.
Lovely, thank you.
Similarly, Chair, Councillor Hollis said to me she might be able to join us later, but didn't expect to start, certainly.
Lovely, thank you for that, Mark. And we have been emailed apologies from Jane James, Chris, I believe.
Thank you.
Cool, brilliant. Welcome everybody else. Moving on to our minutes, 99420. These are the minutes from the 7th of April 2021. Are members of the committee happy with those minutes, please?
There were a couple of notes that I have sent through to the Minute Secretary, Chair. Are you happy for me to mention those now?
Yes, please, Mark, if you may. I was just trying to get up the relevant email, but if you've got it to hand, that'd be really useful.
That's fine. Just on the 91220, the Street Scene and Countryside Officers Report, last line there, the timber costs for making the bridge in-house were about £800, and the budgeted cost for a contractor, we were looking at least 5,000 for that. So the saving there should be at least £4,000 rather than 500. So that was just one point. I'm afraid I spotted it just yesterday. And another one that, again, I just spotted yesterday was under Anglia and Bloom. The second set of bullet points there, I suggested to Chris we put in something like it was agreed for the following year, or for 21 to 22, because that I think referred to next year's competition rather than this one.
Yes, I've changed that, Chair, on the main minutes.
Lovely, thank you, Chris. There was just also one from myself. Just trying to find the relevant section. Last month, when we spoke about hire of outdoor space, the body of the minutes records the fact that our agreement to the two events was, that we agreed to them. But in the actual results section, it doesn't mention to the, subject to the relevant paperwork being received. So I think that should be recorded in the resolved for both of those, because obviously that's what we actually agreed to, as well as discussed it. Are you happy with all three of those, Chris? Those three amendments?
I'm on mute, sorry. Yes, I've got all three of those now, Chair.
Lovely. Are the committee happy with those three amendments to the minutes and happy to approve the minutes, please?
Happy to approve.
Lovely. Thank you, Dave.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Moving on to 99520, action points and updates. Anything from yourself, Mark?
No, nothing that isn't covered in the agenda elsewhere, Chair. Brilliant.
Brenda, did I miss your hand there?
Yeah, you did, but it doesn't really matter. It was going back to Thetford in Bloom, and then where we put back King's House Garden. Well, we have to apply to Stonyford Trust for that, don't we? And I just think that should be on the list, the same as the station, rather than have that under Thetford Town Council.
Lovely. I'm perfectly happy with that. That makes sense. As in one of our sort of partners that we work with.
Yeah.
Good. Well spotted, Brenda.
Chair, can I just butt in to say that Carla's joined us now? Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Chris. Welcome, Carla. Great. Sorry, Mark. Any updates or action points from yourself under 995?
No, nothing that isn't, as I said, covered elsewhere in the agenda. I think it'll all come up.
Brilliant. David Brooks, I believe you're here. Thank you very much for coming. Under the action points one, there's been some conversations or chatter about one of the events we spoke about last month, which was Wheels on the Field. I just wondered, please, if we can deal with that under the action points, and if you could update us on the action from the decision that we made last month, which was to give consent subject to the relevant paperwork. I think it'd be really useful if you could update us, please.
Yeah, certainly, Chair. I'll just give you a quick resume of the timeline of events. So the initial application, covering letter, copy of risk assessment, and the copy of the event plan that, as the event attracts over 500 people, organisers do have to submit a separate event plan to Brecon District Council, and there was a copy of that within the initial correspondence. And that was received on the 22nd of March. Unfortunately, those documents were not signed by the applicant, so we contacted them on the 23rd, the day after, just to say that if they could pop into the office to sign or resubmit the forms, then we could put it before the ALP Committee. The ALP Committee was sitting on the 7th of April, so there was adequate time to get that application in. The resubmitted application was received by the office on the 31st of March, so a week later. And again, we had the copy of the risk assessment, event plan, and the application form. And within the covering letter, it did also state that the event insurance, which we also need, is about to be renewed, and we would receive that in the next 2 to 3 weeks from that date. So what we did is we submitted the application on those instructions on the 7th of April to the ALP meeting. And as Terry has alluded to in the minutes agenda item earlier, the committee did discuss and agree that as long as all the relevant paperwork had been received and it was correct, then the council would agree to the application for the event on Barnham Cross Common. The other thing that has been intimated in the social media chat was that we refused the initial application, which was requested for the 20th of June. We didn't refuse it at that time, but when we made contact with the organiser, we suggested, as the 20th of June was 24 hours before step 4 restrictions would be lifted, therefore a lot more leeway in delivering events, we suggested that maybe when they resubmitted the application form, they move it to the following weekend, to the 27th. And the resubmitted application was dated for the 27th, which came before ALP on the 7th of April. So as a result of the decision by the ALP committee, we made contact with the organiser just to confirm that we have agreed in principle, but we needed the relevant documentation. And then, to be fair, it was for the organiser to submit the relevant documentation, which we are still waiting for. So we have not received any renewed event insurance. We have not, to my knowledge, understood that the event plan has been submitted to Brecon District Council. So we are still in limbo in terms of our committee decision that it was granted subject to. The event is still for the 27th of June. In terms of our situation in the process, if the event insurance hits our desk before that date, then we're perfectly happy. The organiser has a separate obligation to Brecon District Council with event planning, and also I think understand from her covering letter, she also looks to apply for a music licence, which you have to have for an event of that size. So that's where we are. So that's the update, Chair.
Brilliant. I really appreciate that, David. It seems to me that, you know, I didn't want anybody to assume that it was the council at all that was hindering what is a really good event. You know, it's you know, we've got systems and procedures that have to be followed. it sounds to me like, you know, the council's done everything that it should do. So I'm really reassured by that, you know, we're not a hindrance to that event happening. So thank you for that. I've got hands up from Dave, please.
Yeah, can I just ask before we move on? There was some people trying to get into the lobby.
Okay.
Is anybody else able to admit them, or do I have to come out of my share screen and let them in? Is anybody else seeing the lobby? Okay, sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's quite all right. Thanks for
just
doing
want
that.
people to be stuck outside.
Welcome, Roger and Mark. You're in. I've got a hands up from Dave, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a clarification. I think Councillor James pointed out that in the, I think it was the risk assessment that had been presented with the event details, that there was a problem with something in the child protection, where they were mentioning CRB, which was now out of date and should be DBS. So I just wondered if that had been picked up and whether that had been clarified.
I don't know is the answer to that, but
okay. Well,
Dave,
I think, well, I'll just raise it as something to check
yeah,
on.
I can vaguely remember that as well. David, do you know if you've got an answer to Dave's point there? Has that been picked up in the discussions?
To be honest, within the application form, that wasn't indicated that was covered, and again, that was subject to receiving the right documentation. But what I can say is, you know, I know things, you know, have moved on since the initial application of the 22nd of March, but we are on the 5th of May, and this event is on the 27th of June. So as far as the council's concerned, we've received the relevant documentation as was communicated. We are happy with the event.
Okay, thank you for that.
Brilliant. Does anyone else have any other questions, please? No. Great. Thank you, David. For someone moved. What we got? Carla, please.
Thank you, Chair. It came to my attention the whole thing about the event of Wheels on the Field. I think part of the applicants and the people dealing with it, I think part of their grievances is that they weren't communicating exactly precisely which documents were necessary for them to go ahead. I think there's a lack of miscommunication rather than either party being at fault of not taking the steps they're necessary. I think their concern and their worries that they weren't informed exactly about what document or what bits of the document were missing. I think that was the issue. They made me aware that obviously they're concerned and they are worried that the event might not go ahead because they need a certain amount of time to prepare it. I think the issue with the insurance, from what I was told, and this is just from what I was told, is that the insurance would be activated just near the time. In regards to other details of CRB and in those bits and bobs, I'm not absolutely sure, they didn't mention. But all of those would be just easy to pass on that information, you know, specifically which points need correcting for them to be able to address them. I think that their point is that they weren't told what to do exactly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Carla. David, would you like to respond to those points?
Yeah, could I please, Chair? To be honest, the communication that we've had with the organiser has only been to say that if we receive the documentation, your event will be granted. There was no need to identify the pieces that were missing simply because in both covering letters that they submitted, they actually referred to the documentation that we are waiting for, i.e. event insurance. Everything else was submitted, everything else was signed correctly, at least at the second time of asking. So everything went to committee on the 7th of April, absolutely fine, apart from the proviso of receiving the event documentation, which the organiser stated we would receive in 2 to 3 weeks' time. So we didn't need to identify what was missing. They knew what was missing, and we are just waiting for them to furnish the documentation.
Okay, thank you, David. I don't see anybody else indicating. So from my point of view, I'm quite happy that as a council we've given consent. Obviously, we've got our open spaces policy that's been approved by council, which we have to stick to, and it seems as if we are working towards that, which is as it should be. Hopefully, the event can go ahead either on the date planned or at a later date, but we want to support these things whenever possible, is my view, as long as the right bits and pieces are as they should be, insurance and that sort of thing. Thank you very much for that, David. Feel free to leave. I know you don't normally attend ALP, so very grateful for your time.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to 996, please, health and safety, to receive verbal feedback on any matters requiring our attendance. Does any committee member have any particular notes on health and safety this month, please? No. Anything, Mark, specific to this agenda item, or is it under?
No, again, as I said, anything, there are a few sort of tangential issues, I guess, that are mentioned in the report, but we'll come to that in due course.
That's fine, yeah, we'll pick them up in the other agenda items. 99720, street scene and countryside officers report. I think I saw Roger's name pop up. Welcome, Roger, if you're there.
Thank you, Chair.
Lovely. Thank you very much for your report, Roger. Do you want to talk us through the highlights?
Yeah, if you want. As you can see on the screen at the minute, Mark took some pictures of the benches, what we decided, or you decided to use the ends and that. The only thing is we must have used some metal, some of the slats for other jobs in the years gone by. So I've placed an order this morning for some spare slats. So yesterday we took 2 of the benches over to barn to be sprayed. Kevin will have the slats, the rest of the slats for me, sort of beginning of next week. And then there'll be 3 more. Well, there'll be 3 more to go over to Barnum to be sprayed. So that's just down to the committee then to decide where they want them.
Brilliant, thank you. I was amazed it takes 2 months. Is that just because the amount of work they've got on and sort of busy time to get them sprayed up?
Yeah, sort of. The spraying people have got a lot of work on, so they try and fit us in, sort of thing.
Brilliant, great. They look super, but the ends look, great, and recycling them as well is, even better. So thank you for doing that. Anything else, Roger, on your report that you wanted to particularly mention? I know we've got a couple of decisions you want us to make on a few bits.
Yeah, I don't know whether I can't remember whether Mark put that in the part about the one on Abbey Meadow, the bench on Abbey Meadow.
Yeah, that is one of the decisions. I mean, it is a separate agenda item in terms of that. So
I'm going to use that then.
The committee can actually make a decision on it. But yes, we can certainly run through it and mention it now. That well, do you want to say what happened when you went and sort of?
Yeah, we got a report, Chair, that 2 of the bolts had been took out of the feet on the bench, and as you know, and Brenda knows, that was originally was a memorial bench for I can't remember the old chap's name now. But so me and Chris went down to have a look, and yeah, 2 of the bolts had been taken out of the feet, but also the bench had started to be taken apart, as though someone was going to pinch it. So we removed it. That's up the yard at the minute. So I've got some repairs to do on it. But while we was taking it away, I must have had a dozen people, mostly ladies with prams and little ones, saying, "Oh, that's great, that's going. We don't want that back," because antisocial behaviour and sort of threatening behaviour by some, undesirables. So I don't know whether we could find anywhere else to put up a little bit more openly, sort of thing, because that's a lovely bench, but that just seems, that's a shame. And I must admit, when we was taking the bench out, it absolutely, well, in my words, stinks of pee around there. So it's like an open public toilet. So whether we can make a decision to put it somewhere else, sort of more nicer.
Okay. Thank you, Roger. I have my views, but I know Mike and Brenda have some views on this. Brenda, do you want to go first? I appreciate you two, it's your ward, so I'm happy for you to comment first.
The trouble with that bench, it was put in by Peddars Way, Brooklyn Council and the Abbey residents, and it as Roger has stated, it was for a person. Now, over the years, yes, you do get undesirables, but the old ladies still stop there, you know, because it's way mark, so they have a little rest and then can continue on. Over the last 5 or 6 years, they've said, "Can we have another one?" So you know, whether we could say any bench in the town, undesirables would sit on there. So I don't think you can actually take away a bench. You know, you've got to put one there, and if possible, put one further along near Monksgate, because they said that'd be ideal near Monksgate, because it's another little resting place. You know, we could take all the benches away in town because undesirables. I mean, I was uptown this morning marking some tenders, and right outside the Panland, opposite Panland, the benches, well, they were full up with people drinking. You know, they're undesirables. Do you really want people sitting on? You can't stop it, but you know. So do we take every bench away? I don't think we should take the benches away.
Lovely, thank you, Brenda. Mike, did you want to come in next? And then I've got Stuart.
Thanks very much, Chair. Yes, I agree with everything that Brenda said. I'm always concerned when we appear to be giving in to the claim that such an area is used by what is described as undesirables. I suppose they're human beings with a different lifestyle to some of those who walk past them. Obviously, if they're unpleasant to people, that's quite a different issue. And we know what's allowed and what's not allowed. But I think to give in to them and say, OK, we'll remove bench that's used by other people is always a dangerous precedent. We certainly need benches along that route because, as Brenda pointed out, it's heavily used by people who either, as she pointed out, are carrying shopping. That's often the case. There are a number of people living in the area who don't have access to a motor vehicle and they have to walk to the shops. And it's really helpful if they can sit down for a little while. It's also a very pleasant area. There ought to be somewhere there for people to sit. I mean, in a sense, the best thing is to encourage more and more, how can I put it, desirable people to want to use the area so that it's well populated with people who are using it well. I hope we'll agree that we can replace the bench, perhaps in a slightly new site if it's more overlooked somewhere. That would be good to discourage people who are thought by others to be undesirable. But certainly, I'm convinced there's a real need for benches along that route for those who've got heavy shopping when they come back.
Super. Thank you, Mike. And Stuart, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Really echo Brenda and Mike's thoughts. I use the area quite a lot. Mother lives quite nearby, so I do see it in operation many times as I walk by. And yes, I probably know the individuals that Roger's referring to who are probably causing the issues. However, as Mike said, we don't really want to give in to those that are spoiling it for the rest of the people. There is a definite need for resting points along that area. You know, at the Abbey Estate, I think at one point had a quarter of Breckland's housing stock there. So it's a massive estate that potentially comes into town that way. And that is the only resting point between there and the Priory Underpass. So I think we do need to keep a good resting point there. We also, if we've got some more benches up our sleeves, let's have a look where we can facilitate those in that area. Just mindful that the park run does use that area, and we do need to make sure we don't impede the runners that do use on Saturday morning. But let's get it replaced, and as Mike said, let's try and get it self-policed by more and more people making note and discouraging them to be antisocial. Thank you.
Lovely, thanks, Stuart. So the decision before us is whether or not the bench should be returned. We've heard from 3 councillors that they think it should be, and I can see Councillor Mark Robinson waving at me. Would you like to comment?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for allowing me to come in. Interesting piece this, because there are two different, within the comments thus far, there's two opposing views. It's well used by residents, using it as a stopping point on their shopping trips into the town. And then there's a comment, I don't particularly like the phrase undesirables. I do like Mike's Turner phrase, people that live their life in a slightly different manner. But I don't think the solution lies with moving the bench. If there is ASB, you design it out. You don't move the issue to another area. So I would hopefully hope that the committee would take the view to seek a longer term view for this location, and whatever issues are there, we look to mitigate those and design out. I'll leave it there.
No, I really appreciate that, Mark. Thank you. Would anybody like to make a proposal, please, on whether or not we replace the bench? The simplest solution is to replace it in its current location, because the concrete plinth already exists, and I believe there's actually a bin nearby already as well. So the easiest solution, if we're happy with the principle not to have benches removed because of antisocial behaviour, if somebody would like to make a proposal, that would be great.
I will propose that we leave the bench as it is.
Thank you very much, Brenda. Would somebody like to second that? Mike, thank you, Mike. If you could indicate in the chat, please, if you are for or against the proposal from Brenda there.
Chair, I can't get my chat to work, so I'm for.
Lovely. Thank you, Dennis. I've only got one at the moment, and that's Dave, and Dennis too.
Just for it.
Lovely. Thank you, Brenda. And Chris is for as well. Great. And I would be for that as well. Super. So that deals with the decision required on that one. I see Mark's point there about mitigation. I think the thing with all of our street furniture is it comes down to partnership working, particularly with the police. I mean, if we hoiked out every bench because it was being misused, we would soon have none left. I would be kept very keen for particularly the ward councillors to have a conversation with the police. We know that area is a hotspot. Let's not deny the residents of Abbey with a bench because of antisocial behaviour. Let's encourage the police and whatnot to go down there to address some of that antisocial behaviour. So I think that could be an action that we can take away as ward councillors, so we don't just ignore Roger's point there about antisocial behaviour, because it's very valid. And obviously it happens on a number of benches in town, and we want to make sure we have as many benches as we can. Roger, are you happy with that decision? Do you have anything on that one else you want to add?
No, I'm happy with it. But could I just sort of state that I was only sort of relaying what the members of the public have said to me. That's all. But yeah, so put it back when it's repaired.
Yes, please, if you could.
Yeah.
And
no worries.
And I'll make a note separately that we'll aim to have a conversation with the police about that particular area, which will be good. Brenda, anything else on this one before we move on to the other one?
Yeah, just to say thank you to the committee. It is a well-used bench, and when we actually say antisocial behaviour, if I phoned the police every time someone was sitting there drinking, they're not harming me. You can go anywhere in the country and you think, oh my God, another load of drinkers. But actually, a lot of these drinkers, they live in separate houses. They might only live in one room in a separate house. So they sit there, have a chat and have a beer, and then they're off home. They never ever, you might feel intimidated, but they don't actually do anything. So, it's life as it is now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next one to make a decision on is Bracken Road. Mark, is this yourself that has received communication on this one?
Yes, I had the initial communication, Chair, and it was, yeah, basically, well, as it says, the bench is right behind someone's garden, and again, the sort of similar signing issues are taking place there. Roger's looked into this and has identified another site just a little bit further, sort of away from the road. So it's a question really whether the committee are happy with that idea to move it. It would end up sort of behind the hedge, which is behind the school grounds. That's the proposal.
Okay, Dennis, please.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I couldn't find me. Yeah, in moving it, which I can understand why we probably want to move it, what would be the cost of moving it? Because again, there's a concrete plinth to be laid and everything, isn't there?
Very good question, Dennis.
Thank you.
I think I can't remember. I can picture the actual bench, but I can't picture whether it's just sort of in the ground or whether it's on a concrete plinth or not. I don't know if Mark or Roger knows the answer to that.
Roger, I don't know what, Roger, can you remember the bench where it is at the moment? Is it on concrete?
Yeah.
I have a feeling
What it is, Chair, there's a concrete plinth, but that's one of them benches with just like one legs, like well, two legs.
Yeah.
And whoever put it in years ago, they've concreted the concrete base round the legs. So the only thing we can do is that, well, the bench will have to be cut off at the concrete on the base level, and then a couple of more bits of metal welded on to make it the same length if you go let it into the ground.
Okay, so to answer Dennis's
question, but
to answer Dennis's question, how much work is it and how much is it going to cost?
Well, it depends if you want a concrete base put in. I couldn't really tell you, but if we just extend the ends, Chair, get someone to weld a couple of extensions on, and then we can just let it into the grass. So there won't be no concrete base.
Okay, Dennis, you happy with that?
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering. I mean, that's a good solution and everything, but is that going to make it so the bench is not easily removed by unauthorized people, as we have already had one bench attempt to be unauthorizedly moved and taken away? And so in other words, is it going to be so that people can't nick it?
What do you think, Roger? Is it nickable?
No, I won't nick it because that'll be in the ground 2 foot.
Thank you very much. That's great. Thanks.
Brilliant. Carla and Chris, obviously this comes under Borough Ward, as the same principle with Brenda and Mike. Are you sort of generally happy for it to be moved further along the pathway at Barnham Common?
But I particularly don't have an issue with it. I think this bench is unnecessary. Probably use them, albeit there might be some antisocial behaviour, but I do agree with the majority of the councillors that the benches are still necessary and used by the public. The specific location is not a big issue for me as long as they're still within the vicinity. I think you would just have to really look at the cost of moving them around. If we did this out and moving them around, otherwise I'm fine with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Carla. Chris, any thoughts?
Sorry, no, I haven't. You'll have to forgive me for a minute. I've just got a bit gaga.
That's fine, don't worry. Okay.
I'm also a councillor in that ward.
You've already spoken.
Oh, okay then, Chair. I was just going to give my opinion. I think it's a good idea to move it. That's all right.
Good. And you're also always quite happy to give an opinion, Dennis. I don't have to ask you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so Mark, you got your hand up? Mark Robinson?
Thank you, Chair. I've got no issue actually with the reciting of the bench, but I am going to raise a concern about the stated location within the report. Within the report, it states that there's antisocial behaviour, illegal behaviour going on, actually, including the use of I think they're category B drugs. Now it says in the report to move a bit further away, put behind the hedge, behind the school grounds. Are we not then making it easier for those participating in activities that are antisocial and illegal to carry out those activities by locating it out of sight, or is it a case of out of sight, out of mind?
From memory, and I just remind myself of the location, when that bench went in, it was right adjacent to what was a garage block, and then over time Flagship demolished the garage block and put some houses in there. So originally there wasn't ever intended to be so close to houses, because even just people sitting and talking obviously can be a disturbance for people. You know, might be perfectly fine depending on the volume, but so that's why it's become an issue now, and it wasn't an issue when it first went in. And it's obviously not school grounds, it's Charles Burrell Centre grounds rather than a school. And I think as long as it's adjacent to the path, and so basically it's exactly the same in terms of visibility, but just further up the path and away from the houses, it's still visible. To answer your point, it's still just as visible further up the path than it was down the bottom, but it would address that point that you're very close to houses, whereas originally you weren't. So I think I wouldn't want to see it tucked behind the middle of nowhere, just for the sake of noise. But on this particular one, I'm perfectly quite happy to see it moved along. Roger, I can see your hand up. You're muted. You have to unmute yourself, Roger.
I do apologise.
That's okay.
Yeah, that won't be out of sight. That'll just be moved up the pathway towards the shops. About, I reckon, if we move at least about 100 yards, that's all you'll have to move, and that'll be in exactly the same line where it is now, but just a little bit further up. And that lady who's put the complaint in, I must admit, she will be very happy.
Yep, that's fine. I'm happy with that. And again, it's a popular route from Barnum Cross Estate into town, so I don't want it removed completely. But it is immediately, the bench was there before the house, to be fair, but we can solve that problem quite easily. So I'm happy to propose that we move it further up the pathway. If somebody would like to second that, please.
I'll second that if no one's seconding it.
Super, thank you, Brenda. And if you could indicate in the chat that you're for or against that one, just so we get that decision recorded.
I'm for, Chair.
Thank you, Dennis. Super, we got agreed in the comments, and one more you'll be pleased to know. This relates to the picnic table at Nuns Bridges. Mark Webster, can you just remind me what the query was on this one? Because I remember we discussed it last month, and now I can't remember what the decision is.
It may be better to have a look at this after the financial report is discussed, Chair, and then we can sort of make the decision in the agenda item on benches. But basically, just to update you, the volunteers today have been volunteers put in sort of wood filler and restain the usable of the two picnic benches over the river from the Nuns Bridges car park. So one of them is now looking very nice and will last a while longer, I suspect. So there was a vacancy for one there, where the decision was to purchase a new recycled plastic wheelchair-friendly picnic table. So I think the decision required, as I said, once you've seen the financial report as well, is to whether to buy additional benches for that site or other locations.
Lovely, thank you. So we'll pick that one up later. Roger, the next section of your report is bins. Is there anything else you wanted to add on bins? If you're talking, Roger, you're muted. No? Okay. Brenda first, then Dave.
Mike Brundle had his hand up. I don't know whether that was the last. What's it? I've got something to say, but I don't want to jump in front of Mike Brundle if he had something to say on something.
Who knows? Let's find out. Mike?
Thank you, Brenda, and thank you, Chair. I'm not sure. I was probably getting ahead of myself. I do want to comment on suggestions for other sites for picnic tables. But if that's coming later, I can wait.
Yeah, sorry about that, Chair. There's a little bit about extra bit about benches that sneaked into the bins section. That's my editing error there. But do you wish to look at the that other question about benches now, or shall I go back up to bins?
Let's finish bins off and Roger's bit, and then we can deal with the other decisions when we get to them. I think Roger's left the meeting. I don't know if he's had connection issues, but he seems to have dipped out.
Okay, if anybody spots him in the lobby, could they admit him? Because otherwise, I have to de-share if I want to do that.
Okay. Okay. So
Sorry, we're just talking about bins, Mister.
Go on, Brenda. What you got to say on bins?
Well, Councillor Hollis has been trying to fill in the form. She wanted it to come to today's meeting. I don't know if Mark Robinson's still in the meeting or not, because I can only use him there as a guest, but I don't know whether he's listening or not still. There is a bin. She's tried to fill the form in online and she can't do it. She can't edit it. So the only way she can do it is to hand do it, and she hasn't been able to get to town to do it. I think it's outside the school, up on the up at Fairfields. It's an open bin, and every time she goes there, obviously the rubbish is just lying out the bin, and she's wondering whether that bin can be changed. She's not sure who actually owns it.
Yeah, I'll take all of the points and then I'll come back, Brenda. But I do know the one you're talking to because Jenny emailed about it.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, so I'll take Dave first.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's in the report. There's a mention of a bin on Mallow Road, which had a swinging door because it had no lock, and it says it has been replaced. Now, I'm assuming that the bin has been replaced and not the lock. But my question, question is, can we get locks rather than having to replace bins?
Only Roger would know the answer for that, right? So if he's not in the meeting, I'll have to take a note of that one if his internet has failed. But yeah,
I think it's a valid question, because if it's just the lock that's faulty, I think what Dave's saying is let's not throw the whole bin away. Let's just get the lock repaired and use the bin elsewhere. But I think if they'd have had to take the bin away to fix the lock, there'd have been no lock. No bin there at all. So I think replacing the bin makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But not throw the whole bin away, get the lock repaired and put it somewhere else, I think is the point Dave's making.
Yeah, okay, noted.
And just to pick up Brenda's point, the play area at Fairfields near the school, it is a square, I think it's a green bin, which doesn't have a top on it, and that would be an ideal location for one of our new bins if it's ours. I think we need to just confirm that it is a town council bin, that green one. I assume it is. I suspect, Brenda, it was built when the play area was built. It looks like it's the same company that put the bin in. So the play area is ours, and therefore the bin must be ours as well. So assuming it is our bin, are the committee happy for us to replace that one with a more substantial one, please?
Okay.
Yes. Super, brilliant. So I think that answers that one. We've got 5 in stock at the moment, and I don't want to overburden Roger with too many bins and benches and whatnot to do. So we'll just agree to that one at the moment, unless anybody's got a really pressing issue in another location where there's a bin needed. Speak now or forever hold your peace, but that's certainly one to be getting on with, I think.
Chair, just for the minutes, please. Where is the bin is going to be replaced? Where is it?
Yeah, so it's the Fairfields play area.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got that then. Thanks.
Yeah. It's a little green one.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. I don't see anyone else shouting other locations for bins at me, so that's good. Anything else? We don't seem to have Roger back. So anything else, Mark, on Roger's report that we need to make a decision on?
Yeah, there was just the extra bit about benches or picnic tables. I think I was asked the last committee to look at a location at the bottom of what's known as the Woodland Hill in Castle Park, where there's the remains of a bench, to see if we could reuse that site. It hasn't got a concrete base, plinth on that one though. I think there's somebody waiting in the lobby, which is possibly Roger. So if anybody's able to admit him, that would be probably quite handy at this point. But just to say, I think there's already movement on the that we can't use as a location very easily. But I think there's already been movement on the first suggestion, where there's a cracked street.
You just got a text message.
Yeah, that's Roger back in the meeting. Welcome back, Roger. I was just saying about you've already started with the Castle Park. If you can hear me, you've already started to make steps towards making that concrete plinth ready for a bench. I'm not sure he can hear me yet, can he? Okay, well, while he's sort of rejoining us, just to say Roger's already started work on repairing the plinth between the toilets and the play area, with a view to putting a bench back on there. There's also quite a large concrete pad. If anybody's got very long memories, they might be able to tell me what we used to be there, as if it was some kind of hut or something that was on near Castle Lane. So that's a candidate for another bench, or a picnic bench, or one of Roger's refurbished benches. Or we could actually put in new concrete pads, as long as they're between the footpath and Castle Street, i.e. sort of north of the footpath near Castle Street, because that's outside the scheduled ancient monument area. So that is a possibility to put benches there, if members would like to do so. So I suppose there are 3 candidates there with the bullet points for places to put benches, one of which is already happening. And do you think the other 2 are worth pursuing?
Super, thanks for that, Mark. Brenda, do you want to comment on that one?
I know it's pretty hard to put benches on Castle Meadow, and really, if you've got benches, you don't want them too near the road. I was just wondering whether they could go on Milford Common, but obviously you don't want them to hinder the you don't want them where they're going to hinder the fun fair or anything else that goes on down there. But yeah, the actual castle land is very difficult, and I hate it when they put benches on the road, because too near a road, because you know you've got the idea of sitting there and having a picnic at these tables is that the children can't escape. But that's my main worry.
Okay. Roger, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I'm back. I lost my internet. I don't know where it went. Everybody disappeared.
That's okay, don't worry. Just to update you, we've decided the bin at Fairfields, there's a little green bin up there, metal one with no top. I don't suppose you know if that's a town council bin or a Breckland bin?
That's a Breckland bin.
Ah, okay. Well, we've agreed that we'd like to get that replaced with one of our nice bins with a proper top on it.
Well, I have had a look at it, Chair.
Lovely.
And it's got a concrete base there, so we can take that Breckland one out and put one of our ones. And I must admit that would be nice, because that one is always full.
Yep, definitely. So we'll leave that in your capable hands. And Dave was asking a question about, you know, the bin you took away at Mallow Road because there was a broken lock. Is it the intention to fix the lock and resite that bin somewhere?
If we can get a replacement lock, we will.
Yeah.
But personally, I wouldn't bother, because that bin has had a fire in it already.
Okay.
But I can ring them up and see if they can do replacement locks. That's no worry.
Okay, well, we'll leave that with you. It'd be interesting to know because I have spotted several others around town that have faulty locks.
Yeah.
So it'd be good if we can find that out. So that deals with that one. And then just this conversation about benches at Castle Park. There's 2 benches there currently, isn't there? One close to the play area and one close to the trim trail. You've put some more topsoil down and some seed around one of them where there was, there's a big hole in front of it.
Did that yesterday.
Lovely, thank you. And where there's a cracked plinth, I mean, years ago there used to be a bench on there and a tree fell on it, if I remember right. So you're going to take the cracked concrete away, and then you can easily put some more on for a new bench. Is that the plan?
That's it. That's what we planned yesterday. We took away the cracked bits.
Yeah.
But there's half of it which was still all right. So I thought, well, there's no point in taking that up. So all I'll do, I'll just put a bit of shuttering around a bit what we got to do, and just pour a bit of more concrete around, and that'll be another bench to go back in there.
Super. So I think that gives 3 benches overlooking the main part of Castle Park play area, which I think is probably sufficient in that area.
Yeah. Sorry, Chair. You've also got 2 or 3 down near the swings as well.
Yes.
Along Castle Lane side. So you've got a lot of benches on that bit there.
Yeah, definitely. So I don't think we'd probably want any more in that area at the moment. So if we just go ahead and get all of those bits done that we've agreed to, bins and benches, that will do you for the next few weeks, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And then we can have a conversation next month. Councillors can have a think about other priority areas. And then next month we can make some decisions about any remaining bins and benches that are in stock.
Yeah, no worries.
Brilliant. Unless anybody has got anything pressing in terms of bins and benches, I'm happy to leave it there on that one. Mike? Brindle? You need to unmute yourself, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to mention 2 possible areas for picnic benches, which I think are increasingly popular and increasingly needed. People are, particularly during, I know the COVID passing, perhaps we hope it is, but it's certainly been a need during the last few months. One area is on the Mill Road side of the green, just below Nuns Bridges, below stream of Nuns Bridges. It's where we are trying to prevent cars parking. It's a lovely area to stop for a picnic because you can also paddle, and there's a lot of people like to do that. So I think that's a possible place for picnic tables as opposed to benches. And I'll just mention this, though I know it's kind of not our business, but I would like personally to see picnic tables in King's House Gardens. I know that's a standing force decision, but if we're ordering, and it's cheaper if you order in bulk, then I would encourage us to have a word with standing force authorities about whether they would like to contribute by perhaps having a couple to put into King's House Gardens. Thanks.
Okay. I'm sure standing forth trustees on the call noted that comment, Mike, and can pick that up at a standing forth meeting. I'm slightly nervous about encouraging people onto that side of Mill Lane at the moment when we have, an issue with cars parking there and stuff, but we can certainly note that one as well. Roger, is there anything else on your report that you want to make us aware of?
No, I don't think. I think you've covered most things. Have you? I'm looking at the seesaw at the minute. Did you cover that while I was offline?
No, we didn't actually. So did you want to update us on seesaw?
Yeah, that seesaw is, but I know it don't look like it's been repaired, but it has. That's a new matting underneath there. And Lewis from Playscape has said that that isn't designed to have a guard underneath. I know people keep moaning that kiddies can get the fingers upstairs, up inside it, but he's tried his best to get that covered. But I went round the other day and had to poke it back up, So I don't know whether that's something we could look into about replacing the seesaw with a more sort of like modern one, like the one we've got up Pine Close.
Okay. Do you want to get some quotes, and then we can have an agenda item for a future meeting? Because I'm quite sure somebody will say, fine, but what's the cost?
Yeah.
So if we get some quotes first, and then we can have a think about it at a future meeting.
Yeah, no worries. I'll sort that out for you.
Lovely, thank you, Roger. And before I let you go, there's the discussion about the picnic table. Mark, did you want to just deal with agenda item 9998, end of year financial report, which is to, it has been circulated to members outlining the end of year financial position. And we've got a little bit of an underspend, which is always nice. But did you have any narrative, Mark, to add to that report, or was it all sort of
only just to hope that members have noted that probably don't have quite as much in your pockets as the report itself suggested, because we were still waiting when that was written for the invoice for the tree safety work up to the end of that financial year. So there is, the bottom line basically is that there is now, as these as things stand, a £1,600 basically of underspend. As I said, that figure of 5888, which you can see at the bottom of the blue column there, minus about 4,200 for the tree works. Yep. So unless Alan has anything else to add on that, that's just what I was going to update you with that. But as I said, hopefully everyone has seen that update.
Lovely. Thank you for your work on that, Alan and Mark, and circulating it in advance. Is there anything, Alan, you did want to add to that?
No, there's not. I think what we've done is we've just made sure that everything, the only invoice that I haven't actually seen is the one that Mark's alluded to, the Norfolk Trees one. But otherwise, everything, we've made sure that all our accruals are in, so it is a very accurate reflection. But very importantly, we're not going to be carrying, hopefully, any expenditure over from this financial year into next financial year, which I think has happened historically because we haven't been as diligent in getting all the accruals and the stock and all those items up. So hopefully next year we will, we'll continue to have accurate accounting records.
That's really useful. And I think there would have been a bigger underspend had we not made the decision as a committee to get the tree works done. And I think if we're going to invest in anything as a committee, getting some of that tree work done early is a good use of the money, because it will, it will only get worse. They're not going to go away. It's going to be a big issue. Roger, I saw you first. So anything you wanted to add on the finance bit?
Not the finance bit. No, that's above my head. That is.
Good.
For
something.
I'm going to probably make Mark cringe now. On the tree works, I did mention to Mark the other day, we've just had a tree took down up the cemetery. We're storing all the big logs up the cemetery. As it is now, you're going to have a job to get rid of it, because no one want to buy. If we put it up for sale, no one want to buy great lumps of beech like that. I can lay my hands on a big log splitter. If we split that into manageable bits, the council will be able to put it up for sale for, they can put a good price onto it. But that's up to the ALP committee and the council. It won't cost nothing to borrow the big log splitter. That's someone I know, and I've already approached him, and he said all we've got to do is just go over and tow it over here. That's all. But I think with a couple of days, me and Chris could split all that beech up, and that would be more saleable.
There is one thing I've actually thought of since I spoke to you about that, Roger, which is it could potentially be used for chainsaw sculptures, because we will need to put in some chainsaw sculptures, or have a training course on chainsaw sculptures next year.
Yeah.
So that is another. I certainly thought of that yesterday, but that is another possible use actually. So at least if some.
Well, as long as that get used, because I'm old-fashioned. I hate to see a lot of lovely wood like that just lay there and just rot away. There's quite a lot. There's quite a bit of money there lay there at the minute, and that seems a shame to how money is at the time being. It's a shame to leave it laying there.
Okay. Is that something that obviously it's not an agenda item, so we can't make a decision on it today?
I'm sorry.
No, you're all right. I'm quite happy for you to float the idea. But if we don't have to make a decision on it today.
No.
Presumably we can put it as an agenda item for the June meeting, and I think we've given you enough workload for May, and then you can be splitting some logs in June.
Yeah. All right. Ian.
Lovely. Thank you, Roger. And presumably, Mark, some of them might be able to be used for sort of log piles and sort of bug hotels and that sort of thing as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Good. I'd be very keen to sort of have a couple of different uses for it. Brenda, you've been waiting patiently with your hand up.
I'll just touch on Roger's first. With Roger, I knew on the trail that we was going to make, besides the big statues or whatever it was, carvings, we was going to try and make the smaller carvings as well. So you're making like a walk around, so somebody might have carved a hedgehog or the smaller animals. So you're actually you recycling in a way, and I think that'd be a good idea, especially if you're walking the length of the river. They'd be ideal for that. But what I was questioning is looking at the tree budget, and because we've done a lot of work this year, does that mean that we won't have to do so much next year, or will we have to put extra money away for next year?
Well, to be honest, there is absolutely no way of telling. Until the inspectors start having a really good look at things, we really don't know. I mean, we might hope that because we have been sort of catching up with all the work that we should have done over the last few years, you would certainly hope that over time the amount of further sort of major tree surgery required would reduce. Having said that, the town council still has an awful lot of very substantial trees out there. So there's every possibility that when they come to inspect them again this summer, and they're going to be looking at them with leaves on rather than sort of leaves off this time for a change. So they may identify a whole load more problems. As I say, I think I put in my emails, we've got some of the 3 and 6 month work the committee agreed to get done out of sort of last financial year. That still leaves the 12 month work. And there is, as I said, there will be a whole load more tree problems probably identified in the summer, which will probably, some of which may well be 3 and 6 month work again. So I think already we are likely to be overspent on the tree budget for next year, because we have to, out of that that 5455 code, £10,000, we have to pay the inspection costs, which is likely to be about 3,000. There's the 12-month work from last year, 2.5, I think, again. If memory serves, I have to get the email up to get the exact figures. And then there's, as I said, more problems likely to be identified. So I think there's every chance that we will not have an underspend in the tree budget for 21-22.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because we're planting trees as well, and I think long term we're going to have to start enhancing the budget that we put aside for it.
I mean, it certainly is the case that this, if our inspectors come back and say this is what he's doing for safety reasons, whatever the budget is, we basically have to do it. So yes, I mean, that's obviously a decision for the committee, but yeah, one way or the other, that those bills will have to be paid, in order to maintain public safety. And it's, we don't want to chop trees down just for the sake of it. It's only when those recommendations come in that they do present a danger that we do put those into action. So yes, I mean, in the very long term, and I mean longer term than any of us will see, many of the trees that we've been planting this year will probably be requiring some work on them, but certainly in the sort of short to medium term, it might be you know, I'm not quite sure how to phrase this, but it might be problematic if that budget was reduced further. It would still, as I said, you would still have the bills coming in, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Mark. So in terms of the decision that we need to reach on this agenda item, our underspend for the last financial year has been revised down to about 1,600. Can you remind me, Mark, how expensive the metal picnic table was for Nuns Bridges?
I think we were going to go for a recycled plastic picnic bench table, that one.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And those are £469. Not quite sure. I can't quite remember for definite whether that was including VAT and delivery. Although Roger can update on that, remind me about that. But they're basically in the region of £400 to £500 each for the tables, i.e. the sort of table with 2 bench seats either side. In terms of the metal benches, the single sort of benches, they were about £800 to purchase, but we've still got those, at least 5 that Roger's managed to make for, you know, basically some of his time and the cost of a couple of £100 worth of timber. So there has been although we haven't got the 5,000 to spend on benches and tables, we've in effect, with the the repairs that the volunteers done and the sort of rebuilding that Roger's done particularly, we've got probably about £5,000 worth of bench there anyway, as it happens. So yeah, in terms of purchasing, if you I'd say allow £500 for one of those sort of picnic tables.
Yep. So what I'm going to suggest to the committee is that with the underspend, we agree to replace the picnic table at Nuns Bridges, and anything remaining we ring fence into a tree reserve, so we can call upon that if indeed we do need to spend more money on trees in this financial year. So the 1,600 gets used for a new picnic table at Nuns Bridges, and then any remaining on trees.
Agreed.
I'm happy to propose that. Brenda, are you happy to second that?
I will.
Thank you very much. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that or query that, or if you're just happy for us to go straight to the vote. If you could indicate in the chat if you are happy with that proposal, that would be appreciated.
I'm happy.
Thank you, Dennis.
I'm happy to, Terry. I'm having trouble with the chat box at the moment.
Noted. Brilliant. So that gives you another job, Roger, to get a picnic table ordered and popped onto the Plymouth at Nuns Bridges. So you've got a few bits and pieces this month.
All right. Yeah, I wish I hadn't come in this meeting now.
We'll give you more when you're not here.
Exactly. Yeah, we're going to give you a bit more. But no, thank you for coming, Roger. I just wanted you to stay for that bit because that's another little job for you, and you're free to go.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Chair, that will need to be a recommendation, won't it?
That will be a result, Chris, because it's our money.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Our money that we're using in budget.
Yeah.
Alan, are you still with us, Alan? Yeah. Are you happy with that, Alan? Because it's a finance one. We're using the underspend for the bench and then creating a tree reserve. Is that all okay?
That's all okay. I'll set up the reserves. I'm actually finalising them as we speak, so it'll be done.
And if that figure does change at all, then obviously that what we've just agreed gives sort of flexibility with that, basically.
Thank you.
Cool. So that deals with the finance agenda item, and then skip back, Mark, to your report, Countryside Officer's report, if we may.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just zoom through. I hope you don't mind the fast-moving pictures and stuff. Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot. I mean, hopefully everyone's had a good chance to see this over the last week. There's not a lot I need to really do. I mean, just to say that an update from today at Ford Meadow. As I said, that one picnic bench has been kind of nicely repaired. The bottom of the bridge has been painted to match the rest, so that's all sort of fully kind of painted with preservative now. That path through the the volunteers will turn their hand to anything. They were really sort of ingenious in creating a much better path surface through the Nuns Bridges, that Plane Tree Avenue. So that's all good now, I think. And yeah, over the next month or two, and we're going to sort of try and keep an eye on our trees. Roger and Chris have been able to give them some water, some of the more exposed ones when they were the newly planted trees, that is, when they were sort of in that dry spell. And looking out the window, I don't think they're going to need to do the watering this week, but you know, that's really good news that we're able to do that and sort of help them out where we need to. Yeah, perhaps worth noting that quote, one quote we so far received for the school plane wall. So that's again within the sort of financial limit for sort of officers to okay that. If people, you know, as long as members are still happy with us going ahead with that repair. Yeah, really, just really nice to see some of our trees from last year, you know, are growing. We did lose a lot in the drought, but you know, nice to see that gorse already flowering that we planted last year. And as I say, hopefully the combination of mulch mats and actually be able to get out and water this spring, as opposed to lockdown last year, will give us much better survival rates. Yeah, the plastic pollution project. I don't know whether everybody saw the sort of coverage on the EDP webpage with the video and everything. That was really nice to get involved with that. That's been really interesting. We've also been doing some monitoring of water quality at sort of various sites as well, which has been interesting for the volunteers to get involved with another sort of BFER linked project. So that's all from me. I mean, I'm happy to sort of take questions on that if you're ready, Chair. And there's just there's three sort of few other updates which are sort of neither exactly street scene or countryside, which we can sort of mention next if you want to have a look at that.
Lovely. I can see Dennis's hand up already. So Dennis, do you want to go first, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm just finding it interesting that we were doing water quality samples and everything. I just wanted to know if you have any more details on what our water samples quality is like.
Well, it's just sort of not really scientific results yet, but what I can do is when we sort of submit these, this is all part of a sort of wider citizen science project across the whole catchment, as I say. So what I can do is I can send round to members sort of details of that website, and you can look at all the results that we've done and all the other volunteers who are working all around, you know, outside the town, all around the catchment have put in as well. I mean, just briefly from what I've seen, it's quite interesting that the rivers, the nitrate seems to be pretty high. The phosphate is extremely low, and I mean, that's been a bit of a surprise to me, I must say, because I assumed that, you know, if you're getting fertilizer or sewage runoff or that sort of thing, you probably have quite high levels of both. So I don't yet know what that means, but it's, I think, quite an interesting result. So yeah, we'll see what the conclusions from that are. But part of the project, I think, is to try and sort of identify the sources of sort of runoff and water pollution and see where that's coming from and see if sort of action can be taken.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you for that question, Dennis. That's useful. Brenda, please.
Yeah, sorry to keep going on about trees, but I see you're trying to resource some more free trees. Are you actually mapping these so that, you know, if suddenly we've all disappeared, there's a map where all the trees that we own and what needs doing and that sort of thing?
Yeah, there's a quite detailed maps, and I've got them all now for sort of existing trees that need to be checked, if that's what you mean, the ones that are sort of checked by our tree inspectors. So yeah, each individual tree or group of sort of bushes is listed on there. Yes, I do have a kind of a list of where we've planted things as well. So yeah, in 50 years' time they can start checking those.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Any other questions, please, for Mark on his countryside officer's report? No, lovely. Thank you, Mark, for that. Do you want to just touch upon the other bits?
Yeah, I mean, not something I've been directly involved with, but just to make you aware. I think, I mean, unless Alan's got any further updates on this, but the Shambles is basically still going through the process of trying to get some builders to actually sort of turn up and give us quotes for that, which is proving quite difficult at the moment. They're very busy. Thomas Plain Plinth, rather better news, that's all sort of happened basically. So the the work is, well, as people have seen, has been taking place, and the roundels are basically. The only delay there was getting hold of the original, sending the original to the contractor. Roger's quite happy to do the in-house, the painting of the sort of interpretation boards, sort of columns and surrounds, if you like, to refresh them. So so again, that's all in process as well.
Lovely. Really pleased about Thomas Payne Plinth. Obviously, that's been on our to-do list for a long while, so I was quite excited when I saw people down there last week cracking on with that, so thank you for that. And the roundels too, that'd be great. As another job for Roger that we forgot to mention, if he's doing that in-house, painting stuff, so that's another thing for him to do. I did just want to touch upon the shambles, because this does seem to be dragging on. What we're in now, May, and they've been empty since September. Is the end in sight, Alan, that we can actually get these re-let and the work done to bring them up to standard?
Chair, in terms of our financial regulations, we have to have 3 quotes. I think we now have gone out to 15 builders. We are in possession of 2. The second one came in yesterday. I'm hoping we set a deadline, which I'm sure is very shortly, and then hopefully we can get together with you and the time clerk can make a decision. But it has been, we've written our specifications, and we have sent them to so many builders. We really are at the end of our kind of tether and trying to get people to respond.
Okay, and remind me what financial reg says. Isn't there a clause in there that says, you know, you can demonstrate that you've tried to get the quotes, but if you don't get free, it's okay, or is that not the case? No, up to £5,000, you strive for 3. Above that, you have to have 3 quotes. So that's really what our delays are due to. If we could, you know, we've gone out to 15 builders under normal circumstances. Producing those quotes and the evidence that we've actually sent them out would be sufficient. But unfortunately, we have to have a minimum of 3 quotes. Okay, and if we get to the June meeting and that's an agenda item for the shambles and we still don't have free quotes, does the committee have the opportunity to decide if it wishes to suspend financial regulations in that case? What I'm saying is, how long does it drag on for until we make a decision?
Terry, doesn't the shambles then go to a different committee in June? Yes. Right. Okay.
Hence why I'm keen not to lumber them with something that's been outstanding for a long while. I think it's slightly embarrassing for the council that it's been empty since the 1st of September, when we've got people wanting to open shop units in Thetford to start trading, and we're losing money that we could be getting in rent. I appreciate there are procedures in place with financial regs, but we should be talking months, not nearly a year, to get new tenants in there. By the time the work is done, it would have been an entire year. I'm trying to understand the process by which a decision will be arrived at.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chris Crimley, if you could make a note to no, I'm going to ignore that. Sorry, I was going to say make a note to put it on the agenda for June, but it won't be an agenda for June. It will be an agenda for Finance Committee, no doubt. But we shall watch with interest. Brenda, did you have your hand up for something else?
Yeah, I did the Thomas Payne plinth. I'm wondering if once the Thomas Payne's done, whether one of the priorities could be to get some kind of I'm not sure how to phrase this, whether you do it, you know, people go around with their phones and you sort of swipe something and it comes up with what Thomas Payne was all about, or some signage or something.
It's sort of like an interpretation panel sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm wondering whether that could be made one of your priorities or not.
Okay, hold that thought, because I know that we are under budget for the plinth restoration. So let's get the bill in for that first and work out how much we've got left, and then see what else we might want to do. Although Stuart has put his hand up quickly, so Stuart might want to comment on that one.
Yeah, I think we do have a panel opposite on the bell wall about Thomas Payne, so we wouldn't want to duplicate that. it may be something that we could offer a QR code that just pops up on your phone, so you can get the information up in that way by attaching a QR code to the existing panel across the way, or one on the plinth to somewhere subtly. I think the lettering is probably the next job we really ought to be doing, and I think they were looking at getting that done. So I think once we've got that done, then we'll see what's that. But the other crying thing, which Terry, you and I have spoke about, is Julep Singh interpretation panel down there. There's a crying need for a bit more info about that.
Definitely. Okay, so we will come back to that one in June once we've got the full costs and we know where we stand. Anything further, Mark, under street scene or countryside officers report, or does that put all of that one to bed?
I think we're finished.
Super. We've dealt with end of the year financial report, and I believe we've dealt with purchase refurbishment of benches and bins. There's nothing else there. The next one is the Christmas lights installation tender, which was circulated this month. Anything further from Mark or Alan to add on the tender as circulated?
I've nothing to add. I'm a mere conduit in this case, I'm afraid. But I think the decision is simply whether you want to change, whether you're happy with this spec or wish to change it.
Lovely. Hopefully, committee members, you've had a chance to review the specification that was circulated. We always have quite a good spread, I think, of Christmas lights in Thetford, and it looks good to me. Does anyone wish to make any changes, or are we happy to approve the specification?
I'm happy to approve, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Brenda.
Happy.
You're happy, Dennis?
I agree with it.
Super, thank you. I'm not seeing any objections, so I'll take that one as approved for Christmas lights. Moving on to 1001, small grants, to discuss and agree any applications received. And I believe there is one, and presumably, Alan, you want to let us know how they got on with your checklist for that one?
Yeah, I did distribute the checklist. It's coming up on your screen now. And I think the challenge for this particular organisation is they've had 2 previous grants from us. They're a very small organisation. They're an unincorporated organisation, and I think it is quite difficult for them to demonstrate that they actually meet with all our requirements. Mark, if you can just go down a bit. Mark, sorry, can you stop at the assessment checklist? Can you go back up?
Back up, sorry.
Back up, just to the one above the plants. There we are. You can stop there.
Yeah.
And I think really what the challenge is, for example, one of the criteria is that the organisation has to submit audited annual accounts. The constitution of the organisation says they have to have that, but they haven't been able to do that. There's a very informal piece of paper that has some transactions on it that unfortunately you can't make any sense of. So I have made a recommendation. I would imagine that as this organisation is mainly funded by its volunteer members, that there's two recommendations that I have made that the committee may want to consider. The first is just that there is a governing body, because it's not very clear that there is that particular structure, so that we just get the assurance that there is some form of governance. And the second one is, instead of having audited annual financial statements, which I imagine would cost them a fortune, we could just ask for 12 months of bank statements and have a quick look at that, and then we could make a decision at the next meeting when that information is available. I am very conscious that we have given grants before, so the organisation may come and say, well, have we changed our criteria? But you know, we do have a formal grant application system, and it is, you know, our responsibility to ensure that we comply with that to the extent possible.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Mark Robinson, did you want to comment on this? Because I know you've been involved with the with that particular group, the Railway, Friends of Thetford Railway, and are you happy to sort of, I don't know, vouch for them?
I absolutely thank you for inviting me in. Yes, I absolutely am. It's interesting actually. So it's an interesting balancing act, because we quite rightly have to look at things like governance and make sure that what is public money is being directed to benefit public use and our communities. I see a lot of our community groups, a lot of them fit this framework. They're not formally structured. There's those of us that move in the public realm are used to seeing a voluntary group set up. So there's a challenge going forward, I think, actually, how we enable ourselves to actually support groups like this. I've got no doubt, having met with them very recently on site, actually, I've got no doubt that what they're trying to achieve will enhance the street scene around what is often the first window into our town. I'm supportive of the application, which will shock most of you, because most of you know I haven't got green fingers. In fact, I'm more likely to have a fish finger, to be honest with you. So, yeah, I'll stop rambling there, Chairman, because I'm now beginning to ramble. But on the whole, I'm supportive of this, and I'm confident that they will deliver what they say they're going to do if they receive the grant.
Lovely, thank you for that. Yeah, I'm pleased for you to comment, because sort of first-hand knowledge is always really useful. Brenda, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I'm like Mark. I'm also in support of these. They were very helpful when we got our silver awards for Thetford in Bloom, not last year, the year before. They worked really hard with Ros, and I think they're an exceptional group. So I'm in full support.
Okay. Oh, I can see another hand. What have we got here? Carla, please.
So shares take your time to get press the buttons here. Yeah, I was just make a point that while as I understand we have our rules of how to evaluate the grants, I wonder if by setting up that they all have to be audited, we sort of restricting ourselves, making it more complicated for people to access those grants. The problem is that small groups and unincorporated, even small charities that are actually registered with Charities Commission, which is the governing body for those groups, they're not required to have full audited accounts until they reach certain amount of financial value per year of funds. So small groups that move small amounts of money, at best they ought to have some examined, just some accounts checked or signed by a third party, not necessarily have them audited, because there is a cost added to their charity, which quite usually they're quite strained because they're small groups already. For them to pay an accountant to audit those accounts is an added burden on them. So perhaps it would be a good point for us to just have a quick review of our policy for small grants, and maybe put them in line with something done like the Charities Commission or another governing body, because they're still valid, but it would make it easier for the groups, and it would be easier for us to actually attribute those grants furthermore. Like Councillor Ronson, I haven't got a green finger at all, but I'm sure the group will do great work with it from what I heard. Thank you.
Yeah, lovely. I think you're spot on there, actually, Carla, because my concern is about sort of consistency and setting a precedent. We've effectively made other groups either do audited accounts or independent examination. So I do think we need to consider our sort of policy on this, because otherwise, we could be accused of being inconsistent in our approach. So it's an interesting one. I'll bring Dave in first before I ask if there's anything further from Alan. Dave, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm supportive of this. I think they're a very good group, and when I lead walks and go through the station, I always point out the work that they've done, and they do a terrific job on the station there. It is very good. And I support what Carla was saying as well, and I think Alan's suggestion of looking at bank statements as the criteria for this one might be a good way forward. Thank you.
Okay. Alan, are you content that we look to amend the wording of our policy at the next meeting that can better reflect what the requirements are? Because I mean, if we approve this, we're essentially saying our own policy, we're ignoring our own policy that insists on audited accounts or independent examination. But presumably we could look to amend that for a better form of wording.
I think we can, Chair. I think what our policy is at the moment is it looks at startup organisations, and it's actually quite fair towards them, and then it looks at established organisations. And there is a bit of a middle ground between unincorporated small organisations And I think, look at the rules. The rules haven't been revised since 2018, so it might be worthwhile just to have a look at them again and amend the application forms where appropriate. Because, like I say, you have a sense when you review something. I have an affinity for the organisation because I think these are volunteers that are actually putting their own money and support what they do themselves. But we have requirements. My kind of job is to assess that. And if the rules aren't right, then it's our job to also make those rules better and fairer and more easily to comply with. So we don't exclude smaller organisations. So I'm very happy to do that.
Lovely. I think that'd be really useful because I know that you've been through this process a few times now, assessing these different groups with a fresh pair of eyes, and you've created this checklist. So if we could have an agenda item for the next meeting with some recommendations from you for changes. The last thing I want us to be is accused of being hypocrites, where we have a policy and we select when we apply it and when we don't. This is a really good example of where we should be supporting them, but our current rules don't allow us to, and therefore there's something wrong with the rules, basically, in my view. So if we could have a look at that next month, I would be much more content with approving this today. Carla, please. You got your hand up.
Yeah, just a very quick point. I agree with the point of Alan that if they don't have audited accounts that are valid within our policy now, perhaps looking at bank statements be an alternative in this specific case just to get us through this application. But it is the point, Chair, that you made about being consistent and going further is that if the Charity Commission, which governs the small groups, doesn't ask for people to check their bank statements for a privacy matter, some of the charities might not be comfortable showing them by saying that the council is asking for higher threshold of evidence for a small grant than the Charity Commission or other governing bodies themselves do, which actually regulate those charities. So I think we really need to look at the policy, make them accessible, at least put them in line with other bodies to make them even for everybody and fair and equal when we apply the rules to different groups applying. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Carla. And Alan's undertaken to do that next month, which is really encouraging. So the decision before us today is you've seen the application and you've seen Alan's checklist. Can I have a proposal, please, for or against from committee members?
I will propose it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Brenda. And a seconder?
Second it.
Thank you, Dennis. And if you could indicate in the chat, please, if you're for or against.
For.
For Mike Brindle.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so that's certainly a majority indicating for. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
The second part of our small grants agenda item is Alan, I think, is Alan, has kindly produced this schedule of small grants that we awarded in the last financial year. Lots of different local groups there, which is really encouraging to see. Is there anything else, Alan, you wanted to sort of further add to that list, or just really to note what's there?
Chair, just to note what's there.
Lovely. Only one slight error where it says Thetford Town Football Council. Presumably that's Thetford Town Football Club.
It is, Chair. My apologies. It's just out of habits, it's Thetford Town Council. Whenever I see the word TTC, I automatically start writing without thinking. So it is the Thetford Town Football Club.
That's fine, no worries. And presumably we put this on the website or somewhere for people to sort of public interest to know what we've done with their money.
I can do that. One thing I would like to add, one of the criteria that we are supposed to do is every year we're supposed to get feedback on how the grant was used. And I've been looking for evidence that we've done that. So I'm not too sure that we always have. So this year we'll be looking at using this as the base and actually just going back and getting some confirmation, because that would also be very useful feedback. Maybe we can give at the end of next year. This is the grants we dispersed, and this is the impact that it actually had. So we'll add that.
And presumably, when we have our conversation next month about our policy, that point there about feeding back on how it's spent can be better worded in the policy, because I think it's fairly absent at the moment.
I agree with you. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely, brilliant. Thank you ever so much for that. Alan, Brenda.
Yeah, just a quick one, really. I think this checklist is a good idea, and it's nice to get feedback because we can then sort of advertise that. Also, where we give grants and the people of such one group in particular, where they've not done what they said they was going to do, and they ask for more time. So it's remembering them people and getting back to them to see if they actually put them events on.
Yeah.
If you know where I'm coming from.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's that comes back into the monitoring point that Alan just made. If we can now that we've got the checklist, we can then also build in a sort of monitoring procedure. That's good. I think that deals with small grants. Moving on to hire of outdoor space 1002. We discuss and agree the visit to the town of the Circus Fantasia in late September. There is a note on this one that the papers at the time of going to print with the agenda haven't been received. Have they been received, or is this one deferred till next month?
Looks like it's going to have to be deferred to next month, Chair. I certainly haven't received anything yet. So
super. Alan, just so I can double check, anything received by you on this one? Or are you happy for us to move on?
I'm not aware that we've received anything, Chair.
Cool. Okay, well, if it does come in, obviously we can talk about it on the at the June meeting. Moving on, correspondence, to note and discuss any correspondence received. Anything from yourself, Mark?
No, nothing further, Chair.
Super. Anything further from Alan?
Chair, at this stage at the April meeting, I did indicate that we'd received an application for someone to run a market. And just the other day, I realised that I hadn't put it onto the agenda. So I do apologise. I will get that application out to the members so that they'll have time to read it and consider it. And it will definitely be on the June agenda. I do apologise for that oversight.
That's absolutely fine. Well, we've got a couple of bits now for the June meeting, so that looks like it'll be quite interesting. Anything to note under community engagement? If anyone, this is for any committee member to suggest. Jump up and down now before I move on to the next one. No, sold. And lastly, 1005 committee officers update. I'm guessing, Mark, that nothing from yourself. No, we're all
nothing further. I haven't already mentioned.
Super. Well, thank you, Mark and Alan and Roger, who I think is gone, and thank you to all committee members. That concludes our meeting today.
Chair, just before you finish, I would like to just note that this is the last of the virtual meetings, which started almost exactly 12 months ago. So welcome back to real meetings this week. They will be shown live on YouTube and as a recording, and they'll be available to the public to view remotely as they have been doing for the last year. So back to the real life, chaps and ladies.
Chris, have we got dates yet? Dates and locations for the first real meetings?
I would have hoped so. The agendas are coming out for them. I haven't got them with me in front of me, but I do know, for instance, that planning is coming up. And
well, yeah, it's next week. I don't know where and when it is yet, unfortunately.
Okay, well, I should tell you because it's been changed actually. But yes, I will. I'll send a note out if you haven't got notes of those meetings. But yes, they are already. And the agenda will show the venue because they may have to be changed around because, as you know, sometimes the large hall in the Carnegie is hired out from time to time. Blood donors are there next week, so that's why we're going to have to change some of the dates and so on.
Yeah, understood. For social distancing reasons, I suppose the house is not considered adequate for the numbers, is it? Okay, right. Well, yeah.